For Mitt Romney in Michigan. Now it looks like there's really no clear front runner. Both Romney, McCain, and also Mike Huckabee picking up a state each so far in some of the big early battlegrounds. But where does that leave Fred Thompson? He's been campaigning hard in South Carolina, and that state's primary is Saturday. What's he doing to ensure a win there? Well, he joins us now from Clinton, South Carolina. Fred, Thompson, thanks for being with us this morning. You know, we had you on last week, and you were already down there campaigning. One of the big issues that was talked about in a lot of the recent debates, especially in Michigan and South Carolina, is the economy. Now, when we had spoken with you last at a debate in October, you said the economic outlook for the U.S. was rosy. Have you changed your view since then?
No, I hate to start off with a correction, but I've never used the term outlook rosy as far as the economy is concerned. We've had a good stretch back since 2001, 2003 tax cuts. No question about that, but we are facing a downturn now in terms of rate of growth. Unemployment is about 5%, which is moving in the wrong direction. Although a short time ago that was considered to be full employment. So we just need to keep it in perspective and not do drastic things until we know exactly where we are. But there are troubles on the horizon. Back in 2001, we had a stimulus package that involved tax rebates. I think something like that needs to be looked at. But the longer-term consideration is lower tax rates across the board and less regulation, less imposition on the economy. Those are the kinds of things that are going to sustain us over the longer run.
You know, and when we talk specific, South Carolina also does have unemployment rates that exceed the national average, like we saw in Michigan as well. Some of those having to do with jobs leaving the state and leaving the country. What is your solution for ensuring that jobs stay in states like Michigan and South Carolina?
We live in a global economy. We live in a free society. Government is never going to come in, if I have anything to do with it, and tell people what they can and cannot do in that regard. What we've got to do is make sure that we protect our own companies in this global competition that we're in. We have the second highest corporate tax rate in the industrialized world. We're only one of two countries that hadn't lowered the taxes on businesses since 1994. Makes us less competitive. The regulations we put on our companies here make us less competitive. The trick is that for every job we lose, we need to gain a couple of jobs. Frankly, that's happening in South Carolina and other places. BMW, for example, just announced that they're adding on a couple of hundred jobs here while they're downsizing in other parts of the world. So it's not all bad news. And if we would treat our companies right here and induce more companies to come in here and start jobs, for every one we lose, we would gain. And that's the trick. In a global economy, nobody can ever promise anyone that a job is not going to leave or a job is not going to shut down. But if you have a growing economy and good economic policies, good fiscal policies, lower taxes, less regulation, it'll benefit the overall economy and produce a net gain of jobs.
Just to be clear, your quote from the Dearborn, Michigan debate back on October 9th was, I think if you look at the short term, it's rosy. I think if you look at the 10-year projection, it's rosy. You also went on to say we're spending money that we don't have. What do you think the role of the government should be in job creation and retention?
A 10-year projection, a 10-year projection is rosy? No, I've been saying that if you look down the road a little bit, that it's disastrous. The short term looks okay in terms of our overall economic well-being. We were not talking about a recession in that discussion that we were having there in Michigan. We were talking about the economy in general. The shorter term looks okay. Our deficits within historical norms and so forth. But because of the mandatory spending that we're locked into, if you look down the road a little bit, it is disastrous. We're spending the next generation's money. We're burdening them with debt, and these mandatory spending programs will consume our entire budget within a shorter period of time than most people realize, probably 2040, somewhere in there. And so we need to tackle those things now. So we're talking about a little bit apples and oranges here, but shorter term we're going to be fine regardless. Longer term it's going to be disastrous unless we do some things. For example, to reform Social Security and reform Medicare for the long-term benefit of the economy.
Let's talk a little bit about the state of South Carolina. A lot of people looking at the race of saying that perhaps the social conservative vote, the socially conservative and the evangelical voters are going to be split between you and Governor Mike Huckabee. How do you convince those voters that you are the true conservative?
Well, you know, I don't divide people up like that. I say the same thing in all parts of the country, and where I stand does not depend on where I'm standing or what office I'm running for. I've been the consistent conservative, the only one in the race for my entire public career. I've been fighting for lower taxes and less regulation, and fighting for the Second Amendment, and fighting for good conservative judges who will obey and abide by the law instead of making it up as they go along, and compiling a 100% pro-life voting record along the way, strong national security credentials, having served on the Intelligence Committee and other relevant committees. So I think I'm the only one that fits that bill. I was walking the walk back before some of these others were talking the talk. And I do not believe that the coalition that we put together in the 80s is dead, because it's based on the Constitution of the United States and fundamental principles. Those principles found in the Constitution are as relevant today as they've ever been. And that's why I say that this is a battle for the heart and soul of the Republican Party. We're going to adhere to those basic principles, the ones I've been fighting for all this time, or we're going to go off in another direction, or we're going to nominate someone who is newly convinced, apparently, of some of these basic conservative ideals.
You're talking about Mitt Romney?
That name would come to mind, yes.
You're also referring to Mike Huckabee's campaign, one of his campaign managers' quote about the Reagan conservatives, that coalition being dead. Do you believe that Mike Huckabee is a liberal?
I think that his campaign manager let the cat out of the bag when he said the Reagan coalition is dead. That's what they believe. If you look at Governor Huckabee's record in Arkansas, you know, he's very liberal in terms of illegal immigration policies. He supported public funding of illegal immigrants. He resisted state legislatures' attempt to require people to prove that they were citizens before they would be allowed to vote. He opposed that. He's been endorsed by the National Education Association, was the only Republican to appear before them, and got their endorsement because he opposed school vouchers. Yes, when it comes to economic policy and when it comes to foreign policy, as best I can determine what his foreign policy beliefs are, liberal would be the word that I would apply to it.
You've been putting a lot of time in South Carolina. What does it mean to your campaign if you do not win South Carolina?
Well, I'm not going to talk about unsuccessful scenarios. We're getting good results down here. The crowds have been overflow. The fire marshals had to close us down a time or two, and the poll numbers are looking good. We're gaining. Others are falling down some, and so momentum's good, and the direction is good, and it's important to us. There's no question we got to do very well here, but different people are winning these different major contests, and I think a different person will win Saturday in South Carolina. So it's still very much open. No one has settled in on anyone. Everyone is you know, gets to be hero of the day. And so it's a very open contest, and that's very conducive to our kind of message in a place where, you know, strong, good, solid, conservative, constitutional principles are still things that are very, very valued.
All right, so you're hoping to break the field even wider open and rack up a win for yourself there in South Carolina. Hey, thanks for joining us this morning to talk. We appreciate it. Republican presidential candidate, former Tennessee Senator Fred Thompson. Thanks.
Thank you very much.